All right, welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Recharging the Human Battery. We're on AM 950 Radio. I'm your host, Dr. Stefano Sinicropi, and as always, I'm always fired up about talking to you guys. So we've had this conversation over and over again, and I was actually going to talk about other things today, but I've had so many interactions already this week, and I think it is worth it just getting back to this trap that people are falling into, and that is really complacency with taking care of their health because there's so many options where you can live, better. Okay, this isn't everybody doesn't have to be Brian Johnson trying to live to 120 or 150 years old. In some ways, even thinking about like a regiment like that is absolutely exhausting. However, it is the quality of the life that we have while we are here that I am absolutely so obsessed with. It is something that is absolutely reachable. There is, a roadmap, and I want to talk about that roadmap today. It couldn't be more simple. Thinking about that roadmap. But it is that disconnect. And I want to talk about some of the psychology that goes behind this, some of the fear that goes behind it, some of the just the plain old, it's just easier to do easy things. And some of the things we have to do is establish habits that can really help us to live really good, fulfilling lives. And the truth is, who doesn't want to be fully present for their families? Who doesn't want to feel like they're completely dialed in, they're present in the moment, not thinking about their pain or their discomfort or their anxiety, and I can go on and on. This has been something that honestly cultures have obsessed about since the beginning of time. If you look at every single culture, all of them have a representation that deals with longevity and endurance and just leading a good lives, anywhere from the fountain of youth. Right to the tortoise and the crane and the Japanese culture, and on and on and on. From there, the peach in China that only ripens once every 3,000 years. That is the peach of vitality. We've been obsessed with living these great lives all the time, but yet I see a ton of dysfunction day after day as I, go through these busy clinics. And again, when I'm in the integrative health clinic, yes, people are coming to me because they don't feel well. They have all kinds of other issues. Sometimes it's pain, sometimes it's some disease, whatever. In the spine clinic, though, they're coming to me for one issue, but so many people are so not happy. They're feeling ill. They've got all kinds of comorbidities. They've got all kinds of things. I pull up their chart. They have every diagnosis, that we have available to us. It goes on and on and on. But yet there is a disconnect between the way they are living their lifestyle, what they are doing, how they are measuring where they really are, and then being able to take that and do something about it. And again, it's a twofold process because on the one hand, people have all these psychological barriers. They don't want to do it, this and that. On the other hand, sometimes the traditional medical system is not the best place to go when you just don't feel well and you're just looking more for longevity, vitality, endurance, those kinds of things. Sometimes the traditional medical system, it's more of a sick care system. So better when you actually get sick. And preventative care, no one's going to make, listen, no one's going to argue with me on this. Our preventative care, what we do is woefully inadequate in this country. And, I and many others like myself are trying to do something about it. We're obsessed with this. And I'm going to bring my obsession to you. And sometimes I sound repetitive, but the truth is, if I don't keep repeating these things, it's not going to work, right? Just like when you repeat a name 3 times, you're more likely to remember it. Hopefully, when I keep repeating these things over and over to you guys and you keep listening to me week in and week out, it's going to make a difference. So on the other side of the break, let's go through it. Let's talk about the barriers, what we actually can do, and the simple strategies to help you lead your best life. This is AM 950 Radio, Recharging the Human Battery. I'm Dr. Sinicropi, and we'll see you in a minute. Welcome back, everyone. We are on the other side of the break. This is AM 950 Radio, recharging the human battery. This is Dr. Sinicropi. Listen, I could just rant and go on for this, this entire segment. But listen, I just want to have this heartfelt conversation with you. Listen, you can do better as far as taking the appropriate steps. I'm going to give you the strategies today. It's actually very simple. Now, some of it is going to take some work on your part, but this is the way to go. And again, I speak all over the country. I speak to all kinds of people from, people that are like in community centers all the way up to just the highest level, entrepreneurs, wealthiest people in the country. And I can tell you the overarching theme is there's this big gap between what we could be doing and where we actually are. And that space, that gap is completely underestimated. It is actually a huge chasm. It's very, very wide. And yet people from all kinds of backgrounds actually assign tell themselves stories. They're healthier than they are. I'm doing what I can. This is just normal. This is just part of aging. Oh, I just have the genetics because this is the family I come from. It's just too hard. Blah blah blah. I mean, there's so many different things that I hear, but the problem is that I'm looking at a person that a lot of times is completely broken and wants help, but yet unless we are honest with ourselves and we can overcome some of these mental barriers, it is going to be really hard to make a difference. And so I think it's our job as those that are in the trenches to really educate on what's possible. And I just want to help you guys to get to the next level, whether you come and see me personally, whether you read some of the things I talk about, whether you find, there's so many incredible doctors and other providers out there talking about this stuff day in and day out on social media, in books that they write, but you have to actually engage in that content and get away from the absolute nonsensical garbage from people that are not qualified, don't have the credentials, are selling you some product or something like that that's going to change your whole life. I'm sorry, it just doesn't work like that, because if that was the case, if there were these products that are going to give you immortality, or it's the one thing that you need to take, or this and this and that, I'd just be taking those things. I'd recommend it to everybody. I would be on an island somewhere sipping something fun and working on other things. But that's not where we are. That's not the way it works. So we're going to talk about these strategies. So just very basic things. Let's talk about 3 examples of things that just happen, but we could do something about it. Listen, vascular disease, heart disease. Heart disease is the number one killer, period. And so I think we have to think about, like, how do we get to that point? And it is not something that happens overnight. Yes, the heart attack might happen overnight or in an instant, but the heart attack really began decades before that. There's something that we talk about all the time, and that is this concept of inflammation. Okay. And inflammation is just a deadly, deadly problem. And we are all living in these states of inflammation. And so, how do we know if we're going down that direction if we are not measuring? The next thing, insulin resistance. I talk about this all the time, pre-diabetes and diabetes. There is a staggering number of pre-diabetics and diabetics in this country. Unfortunately, most people that are pre-diabetic don't even know. And years and years and years, the insulin resistance keeps getting worse. Eventually, you become diabetic, and many diabetics don't even know they're diabetic. And then let's not even talk about how we are approaching diabetes. I think the GLP-1 drugs and some of the other things are certainly helped, but there's so many people that don't even know. And again, insulin resistance, diabetes, that's going to contribute to more inflammation, more damage of your blood vessels, more damage of your end organs, shorter lives, and poorer lives filled with a lot of sickness. And then just another one that obviously I talk about all the time, and that's bone loss. It's absolutely shocking to me, the number of people that have never even looked at their bone density, especially women. And so we always talk about getting things like DEXA scans, and others. I love the DEXA scan because you can both get that and look at your muscle mass and other things. But if we don't know where we are, again, I'm a spine surgeon. I'm also an orthopedic surgeon. So you know what? You know when people come to me when they've already had fractures, not when this stuff is happening, and we can do so much. For this, and it's as simple as resistance exercises, increasing protein intake, and then there's other more advanced things we can do. But we've got to start with the basics. And I'm telling you, I talk to people every single day and counsel them on all these things, and they are completely and utterly clueless on what could have been done. They just don't know. And it's shocking because again, our system is designed to really treat you once you get sick. Now listen, if you guys are physicians out there, I know tons of physicians follow me, especially on social media. Tons of providers follow me, and I really appreciate it because it's been quite a journey. And the more I've been doing this, the more you guys have reached out, and I've gotten to be friends with a lot of you that are really trying to do the same things, and friends with a lot of you that really haven't thought of these things and now want to go down that road. I want you guys to really become obsessed, okay, with not just looking at, oh, this lab is okay or this metric or whatever. Ultimately, is the patient feeling better? Are they getting healthier? Are they overall in a better metabolic, cardiometabolic state? Are they overall healthier? And this is what we need to look at. We can't just look at one metric like, oh, we brought down their blood sugar some because we put them on a bunch of either oral medications or insulin. Yes, that's necessary if somebody's severely diabetic, but there's so many other parameters that we need to be looking at. And so we need an army of providers that are really educating people, are out there and making a huge difference. So I really appreciate it because when I first started this journey, I was afraid that because I was really going against the grain, swimming upstream, I was going to get so much criticism from you guys. But honestly, the medical community has, embraced what we're trying to do. They come out to our events, they come out to our talks, and so it's very exciting that there's people out there that really want to learn. And I want to make this very clear, and I made it really clear in my book, and that is that the doctors are not the villains. We are, the doctors. Even though sometimes I'm very critical of the medical system, the truth is, number one, doctors are, they grew up in our society. And so a lot of the same, corporate ideas and things like that, things that are really holding us down and making us sick are just a part of who we are. We were all there. I mean, I was there too, right? I wasn't this person, 20 years ago when I finished my training. I've completely morphed and changed because I had to take myself out of it. And on the flip side, our system, the docs or the providers that are in the traditional system, we're not really given the tools, to spend an hour with you, to review epigenetic testing, to review cardiometabolic testing. Because honestly, in your mentality, if we have to get through a patient visit in 8 minutes or 15 minutes, like there's just no time to do that. And we're not given the time. Okay. We need to go back to the old days where we knew our patients, we connected with our patients, we spent hours with our patients, we reviewed their studies, and the studies have never been more advanced than they are now. And they're just not studies for the sake of studies. They're studies that can make massive, massive impacts in people's quality of life. So this, you know, talk or whatever, this little time that I'm going to spend with you is not aimed at pointing fingers to against anybody. It is about how together can we make the impacts that can make you and your families healthier. What are the changes that we can make that can make us as a medical community better at taking care of you and getting you the outcomes that we're really looking for. Okay. So we got to start here. Before I go into the very simple four-step process, I'm going to repeat the four-step process until I'm blue in the face. It is the most basic thing possible. It's going to sound like a second grader put it together, but yet I'm telling you, it is not even close, to being followed. Before we get there, let's talk about the average annual physical and what it is for. So the annual physical, right? We're looking at very basic, usually lab testing, looking at your heart rate. Sometimes you'll get an EKG, you'll get other things. I think that certainly annual physicals, what you would call the standard labs, are great at picking up when you are actually sick. So if you have standard labs that are way out of whack, that's very important to know because those standard labs, if they are way out of whack, can indicate very, very serious disease that needs to be treated, and many people are absolutely saved by standard labs. The problem is that the standard labs, for most things, fatigue, not working at your maximum, all kinds of other things, are woefully, woefully inadequate at telling you where you are now. So we'll get into that, but let's put that. What I do like about like the annual physicals and things like that, and one of the things that absolutely I am 100% behind and want people to understand there are all of these preventative measures. I think that sometimes these wellness people and this whole crowd, okay, which I love, I speak to them all the time, they go way, way overboard. So it is very important to have your colonoscopy or your Cologuard done. It is very important, to have your mammograms, your breast exams, and things like that. It is very important to check your prostate and have your PSA done. And then we can go even deeper to some of the other cancer diseases. And there are a whole host of battery of tests that look at all these different cancer markers, which are above and beyond, traditional testing. But the basics are there because we need to look at what are the biggest things that affect, humanity. A lot of the heart stuff that we do, except that I would certainly add stuff to that. I think advanced lipid panels are very, very critical. Like ApoB, which is unfortunately, very rarely. It's a lot more done now than it was before, but that really gives you a much better, marker of whether or not potentially you're going to have a heart attack. LDL can be normal in about 50% of people that have heart attacks. So that's the basics. You guys know it. You do your annual physicals. You get the clean bill of health. In Minnesota here, many people go down and get the kind of the Mayo executive, physical, which is a bump up from there, which is much more thorough. You see a bunch of providers, you do a bunch of testing. I really like that stuff. I think that honestly, we need to go even further in a different way. And I think what's, lacking with some of those executive physicals, and again, I think that they're great. It's like, what do you do afterwards? Who then is your guide, after that? All right, let's get going. All right, let's talk about is the really the process. Okay. This is very simple. We're going to repeat this multiple times. Number one, you measure. Number two, you make a plan. Number three, you execute and track the plan. Number four, rinse and repeat. Okay, let's do this again. Number one, we measure accurately across a wide swath of measures. Okay, so that means cardiometabolic testing, epigenetic testing, lab testing, scans. Okay, then we make a plan together made by experts along with the patient because we have to make sure that this is something that they can actually do. But these are intense planning that can get us significant proven benefits from what we do. Number three, extraordinarily important, we have to execute, okay, and be able to have an assessment of what we are doing with the plan. So if we roll out a 1-year plan, we have to execute it. And that means frequent follow-ups with the providers, frequent lab testing as needed, frequent, touch bases as needed, especially when looking at things like wearable devices, what your sleep quality is like, what your heart rate variability is like. There's all these different parameters that we can look at. Okay. Then we get to the end. We've measured everything. We've shown that we have made a significant impact in your cardio metabolic health, in your overall, generalized health. You're feeling better. And guess what we do then? We rinse and repeat. Now we have another measurement at the end of this period of time. Then we make a new plan. Sometimes we go a different direction. Sometimes the plan is more advanced. We execute the plan, rinse and repeat. This is how easy this is. But I can tell you, think about the way that you have gone through your own health journeys. Think about the way you've gone through kind of the traditional medical system. That is not really, necessarily what is happening. And so I can't believe, and it's interesting because I always, when I give my talks, I always will call out on the audience. Did you do this? Did you do this? Then did you do this? Then did you do this? I can tell you the show of hands in the room when we talk about how to really strategize on this, it's pretty empty. There's not a lot of going on. In fact, some of the things, that I'll say and ask, have you done this? Have you done that? There's not a single person in the room that has done it. And to me personally, a lot of that is shocking, especially when I'm in rooms where people have the means, frankly, to do whatever they want. You know what? If they can spend money and go out on a boat all day in Greece, I think that they have enough to be able to do whatever they can, or at least pay attention, to their health. And again, this doesn't have to all be super expensive. There are the basics, and people aren't even doing the basics, and we'll get into that. Okay, so let's get into those three obviously the rinse and repeat thing is obvious, but let's get into the three big categories. All right. Measurement. So in my long, my long clinical years, the 20 years in practice, seeing over 25,000 patients, I think that the overarching, theme is like when we ask ourselves, well, what's the basics? What's basically wrong? What's basically wrong? Well, what's basically wrong is we don't even know where we're starting, especially when it comes to longevity and where people are. So people might quote unquote feel fine, which is, as I told you guys, those are some dangerous words. They might feel fine, but what is going on in the human body that then will lead to catastrophic potential results down the road, or at least not functioning our absolute best. All right, so let's think about how we measure. Let's go back to that primary care, typical examination, right? You get your complete blood counts, right? You get a couple of other labs. Sometimes you might get like a hormonal assessment or something like that. Honestly, in the primary care settings, quite rare, especially for men. Women now with more things out there, a lot of them will follow with their OBGYNs as well. And so they'll get a lot of the appropriate, hormonal testing and such. For people though that are otherwise, feeling okay, certain age, they're not getting things like bone density tests, muscle mass testing, those kinds of things, which are tremendously valuable. Let's talk about the categories now. So, one that we've talked about before on the show, I talk about it all the time, is looking at epigenetic testing. So, epigenetics means above genetics, and epigenetics is the study of how genes are expressed. So, a certain percentage of our genes are fixed. You can say that it's 20 to 40%, depending on the sources you look at. But then the rest of them are actually will turn on and turn off depending on our lifestyle, environmental factors, etc. And so the epigenetic testing will tell us what is going on in the body. For example, we use something called the age code. The age code is going to look at 11 different organ systems. It's going to look at markers of inflammation, markers of exposure to toxins, inability to process certain things, MTFHR, gene mutations, things like that. We're not going to get into epigenetic testing. Honestly, that's an entire show of on its own. But as a provider and you as a patient, kind of where you are, which genes are being turned on and turned off. Now, they are compared against like an entire population, but ultimately we want to use epigenetic testing to test you against yourself to see what changes, what genes are going to turn on and turn off. So that's one category. The next category, which I'm telling you, almost nobody is doing, okay, and it's in that same range as epigenetic testing, is very advanced cardiometabolic testing. Okay, so there's something called the VO2 max. That's a measure of the maximum amount of oxygen that your body can use. I've talked about this before. Here's the deal. Your ability to process oxygen is critical. And so if we look at the difference between an elite athlete who's going to be in the top quintile, right, in the top 20% versus somebody that's totally sedentary, doesn't move at all, is going to be in the bottom, fifth, the quintile, which is the bottom 20%, the difference in mortality is 500%. 500%. Let's do another one. We have a DEXA scan, right? That's going to look at your bone density. It's also going to show you the amount of visceral fat that you have, and it's also going to show you how muscled you are. Now, bone density is self-explanatory. As I've said, the amount of compression fractures of the wrists, the spine, the hips, and so on is staggering in the country, and it's only getting worse. But even more importantly than that, just the very, very simple marker is the amount of muscle that you keep as you age is directly proportional to how well you're going to live and how long you're going to live. It is one of the most and best studied statistics that are out there. So if you look at your VO2 max and you look at how much muscle you have, that's the key to everything. You can do a $25 grip strength test that is going to actually show you a startling good predictor of whether you're going to die, believe it or not. And there's all these things, and it goes by your weight and your whether you're male or female, and so on. But it is very, very critical. These are the most basic things I'm telling you about, and no one's doing it. There's something called the resting metabolic rate. It's a measured number of calories your body burns at rest. This is really, really important because it helps us to tailor your diet and optimize what you are putting in your mouths and how you are kind of structuring your day. Nobody knows this. If you don't know it, you cannot, get to the next level. If I ask people, "What's your resting metabolic rate?" I mean, blank stares and faces. And then there's another one about power, and there's something called these force plates. It's very cheap to do. We want to just basically look at how much power each of your legs can generate, things like that. It's very important in asymmetries, things imbalance. As we get older, you can lose balance. And then on top of that, we do all kinds of, hand-eye coordination testing, strength of cognitive abilities, all kinds of things. You put them all together and you actually have a baseline moving, forward. Speaking of cognitive abilities, there's all kinds of testing that are done when we're looking at brain health. We can look at something called quantitative EEGs. It's like an EKG of your brain. We can look at blood testing. Okay, some of it's experimental, but it's great, things to look at whether or not you are potentially susceptible to having dementia down the road, and so on. Okay, the next series of things, and again, I don't have a ton of time to go through every single thing, but it comes to lab testing. Advanced lipid panels are a great example of that. High sensitivity CRPs, markers of inflammation in our blood. Very critical to look at things like vitamin D levels, which, believe it or not, even in Minnesota, most people don't have no clue what their vitamin D levels. And up here in the north, people tend to have low vitamin D levels. And it's really the most important hormone, or one of the most important hormones, certainly in the body. And so many diseases, we can't even make strides if their vitamin D level is really low. One of which is concussion, very well known thing, but that goes for other diseases. And there's a whole host of other battery of labs, including hormonal testing and advanced thyroid panels, and especially looking at people that, although their blood sugars might be normal, we have to look at fasting, right? Fasting glucose, fasting insulin, that these kinds of things. Very, very critical. A lot of people are not doing it, and this is going to save lives. Maybe not in the moment, but certainly down the road. When I say save lives, it's saving the quality of your life. If we can establish a baseline and then measure against it as we roll out treatments, for you guys. Okay, so now's the next one. It's a little bit more advanced. There's a little bit of controversy out there. It's really not controversial to me, but people like to look at these big population studies and blah, blah, blah. But I can tell you, you are you. Like, you're an N of one. To be honest with you, when I look at my own health or my family's health, if I look at a study and they looked at 5,000 people and say, well, it's really not worth it because you only picked up X amount of these problems on the scan. But guess what? If I pick it up on me or my family, it's worth a lot. Okay. And so there we can get into a whole discussion about total body scans. So total body MRIs and total body, including the brain. okay, which can give some interesting, findings and occasionally pick up, catastrophic things. And again, if you look at big population studies, is it worth it from a financial standpoint? It's worth it for you to do it potentially though, because it's just one. It's an N of one. Just like I tell my patients, this I got on surgeries. Yeah, this surgery might have a 1% complication rate, but if you're in the 1%, you could care less about the other 99% because you are an N of one. It's just one, it's just you. So the question is, what's best for you? What's best for your family? So looking at things like high resolution CT scans. I mean, if you look at, like certain CT scans, I mean, literally, you could find a tumor the size of a grain of sand, right? What's that worth? And so we have to decide. So I'm very big into these preventative, testing. I understand that it is not maybe cost effective in the system. And sometimes you have to come out of pocket to do it, but it's something that it might be worth it for you to do it. And I can tell you a lot of these executive health physicals, a lot of these other things where they're going above and beyond absolutely have total body, scanning as part of it. So you can see the measurement stuff we just talked about is very broad, and I didn't even get into, look at like retinal scanning and all these other things that I think would be a very good part of just getting general scans. But it's very extensive, and it's probably most than 99% of you have done. Because if honestly, if you put in the comments that you've done all these things, I would be in shock. I'd want to know who sent you for all those things, and I would just want to, give the person a high five. So, all right, that's testing. Now we go to the plan. Again, I could do an entire hour show on the plan. This is very simple. We take the sum total of this all of these data points that you get, okay? So now I not only have all of these things and use my 20 years of experience and then, use the knowledge base I have, but now we have all of these AI systems that can aggregate massive amounts of data. So it could take all the data you have, put it all together to make recommendations. Then I can work with those recommendations and tailor them based on my experience and my knowledge. Then we can put you into certain buckets of kind of what is your, like, what is your persona, right? Are you somebody, we're going to focus more on brain health? Are you somebody that has more of like just general metabolic issues? Are you just somebody that's actually really healthy and we're just going to focus on longevity? Are you somebody that has an autoimmune disease, et cetera? There's all these different general personas and buckets we can put you in, and then we tailor treatment strategy. Some of it is going to be traditional medical stuff because obviously people have real, serious problems, and I'm still a big proponent of traditional medical care, especially for things like cancers and other serious diseases, although there are so many adjacent things we can do to that. Then we'll use things like advanced biohacking protocols. That means red light therapies, oxygen therapies. I can go on that. Regenerative medicine therapies, your own stem cells, utilizing acellular stem cell therapy. So many different options in these regenerative medicine buckets. We look at things like Eastern medicine. We can do acupuncture techniques. We can look at things like energy healing, energy medicine. That can be done actually with with people. It can be done now with machines. There's so much science really developing around energy healing and other things, and it's not woo-woo. I thought it was too. And there's just so much evidence of people getting better with these techniques. Things like meditation can make a huge difference in improving things like heart rate variability and other things. And so we really need to make a cohesive strategy and plan. Then we're going to fix what is wrong. So if you have a hormonal issue, if you have a thyroid issue, if you have any other issues with your organ systems, then we're going to look at basically a combination strategy for those and work together to make sure that this is a plan that you can go through. Now, that plan is going to include changes in nutrition. It's going to include looking at your sleep habits and how we can make those better. It can look at getting toxins, out of, your system, getting out of homes that have mold toxin illness, getting away from places that you could be exposed to heavy metals. And yes, that's all part of the testing. We're going to look at heavy metal test, whether you have these other toxins in your systems. You're getting it though. This is complex. Then we're going to look at all the different buckets, whether it be physical, mental, or spiritual, and really build out a comprehensive plan and then checkpoints for which we are going to aggressively look at, and we're going to monitor a lot of this stuff with wearables and so on. This is the way that we can really make people better. And at certain landmarks, milestones, so usually at 6 months and at 12 months, we'll do very advanced lab testing again, just to see where we are, repeat epigenetic testing, and so on. So that's the planning section. Please leave any comments, down below. I'm happy to answer all your questions. I know we can't go through all these things. And then segment 4, this is the most critical of all of them. Once you've gotten through this, you have to execute the plan. So executing the plan, it's just not up to you. You've got to be with the right providers and clinics that can actually help you to execute the plan. And so there's a lot of very high priced places out there that you can get super advanced lab testing, all these other things. They've got great marketing teams, they do this and that. And some of the stuff that I've put in my testing, they have a lot of it. Okay. And here's the problem. Once you do that, then what? Who's managing that? Is the person that's actually managing it going to take into account all of the different things that you've tested for, and then put together a comprehensive strategy and plan, and then help you to execute that plan on a daily basis through things like apps, tracking you with wearables, touch bases with the clinic, on, and then have those more milestones potentially at 3 months, at 6 months, at 9 months, and at 12 months. So it is something that has to be worked through together. And it is, pretty useful. I know people that have had very advanced lab testing and scans and things like that. And then you know what? They do nothing. And then it's year 1, and then it's year 2, and then it's year 3, and they haven't done anything other than complain and make excuses for why, they're not doing it. So bottom line is, we have to be honest with ourselves. Are we actually executing the plan? And guess what's going to show whether we're executing the plan? It's going to be all those parameters we talked about, those labs. What are epigenetic testing doing? What are our blood sugars doing? What's our high sensitivity CRP doing? And whatever other things we're measuring, depending on which bucket you fall into. And then the last one, once we do all that, guess what? Now we've gone on a journey together. The more improvement you see, the more you're going to be motivated to take yourself to the next level, right? It's just like you start, right? You start an exercise program or weight loss. When you step on that scale and you've lost 5 pounds, you're more inspired, right? To do more, right? You remember, the show, America's Biggest Loser, right? When they stepped on there, man, they lost 17 pounds. They're just excited, right? They want to do even more. They become even more obsessed. So once you get into these plans, a lot of times it is a really, right, it's the virtuous cycle as opposed to the vicious cycle, and then we can take you to the next level. And again, then when rinse and repeat. Okay. So there was a lot there. There's a lot to digest. We'll kind of close it up on the other side of the break, but I want to say this. All of this stuff is a moot point if you don't make the decision to start. We have to get over these cognitive biases that allow us to tell ourselves we're fine, we're okay, it doesn't matter. We don't connect the dots between our lifestyle and where we are now. We're going to start later. It's too hard. Everybody else is sick. And I can go on and on and on. And actually, I can do an entire show on the psychology of why people can't get around putting the effort in to really getting themselves better. And in fact, I'm going to do that because it'd be very, very interesting. There's all these psychologists that can help us to decipher what these mental blocks are in our mind. So when we can get over that, and when we make the decision, and that first step is getting in to have the testing. And so whether you come into it with epigenetic testing, whether you come into it with cardiometabolic testing or just advanced labs, right? Or you get your scan, that starts the momentum because now you have data. So we have to not be afraid to have the data to know where we are now, because just because you don't turn on the television, they're still playing the game. And so those processes are still going on in your body. So I think that being aware of that and making the decision to take the step to go in and get those tests puts you in a position where then you need to respond to that. And having the right people then guide you once they see your test results, that's the way you start, and that's the way you get into this four-step process, which I think, if we really adapt it, can absolutely change the course of American healthcare and the course of world healthcare. And this is my obsession. So we'll close this up on the other side of the break. This is AM 950 Radio, recharging the human battery. I'm your friendly host, Dr. Stefano Sinicropi, board certified orthopedic spine surgeon and longevity expert. And guys, I want you to really to take care of yourselves. Come on back with me on the other side of the break, and we'll get this closed up. And as always, please put your comments down below. All right, guys, welcome back to Recharging the Human Battery Radio. This is AM 950. I'm your host, Dr. Stefano Sinicropi, and honestly, this this journey that I've taken you through is just everything that is core to my being and what I am trying to educate you guys on. And again, it's not just me. There's an army of us, developing. There's just so much momentum behind this longevity movement. And we say longevity, it's not how many years we live. It's really how well we live. And this is an obsession to me because it's difficult. It's really hard as somebody that sees, thousands of patients a year to watch people in situations where they either don't know what's possible or just in complete denial, watching them get sicker, watching them actually get care when they think they're doing the right thing and still getting sicker. And so this is a burden that I've carried for a long time. And that's why really the entire remainder of my career is going to be focused on education, getting people to live the absolute best lives possible. And so I always start, my talks recently by saying that the two, people, that I failed because I didn't know, okay, were both of my parents who both, died and probably shouldn't, have died the way that they did because I didn't know that there were other things possible. Now, they both died of different forms of cancer. And I always start my talks with this empty chair thing where, I just put out some empty chairs and I say, this is who's missing from my life. And these are two patients that I failed because I could have put them in a much better direction. I could have gotten them to the right people, but I also didn't know because I thought they were getting the best care and they weren't. And so the question is, who are the people at the table that you want to keep there in those chairs? I don't want you guys to have those empty chairs. I don't want you to be the empty chair where you're gone. Or sometimes we could just call those empty chairs, the people are still there, but they're zombies, right? They're just just the shade of who they were before. And this is something that I think that we can make a massive, massive impact on. So what I want you guys to do for me, you've heard this thing, maybe you're inspired, just for today and you're going to do something and you're going to look into it. Number one, please reach out. I love, working with you guys and trying to put you in the right direction. But think about yourselves first. Are you doing the right testing? Think about, getting your epigenetic test. Think about getting cardiometabolic testing. And right here in Minnesota, you can go to Human Powered Health. It's right in Edina, Human Powered Health. You could get the most advanced cardiometabolic testing. We use them and we get all kinds of information and data to help people. Go and ask your primary care providers about advanced lipid testing. Ask them about high sensitivity CRP. Make sure your hormones are checked and so on. And consider getting, whole body scans and absolutely make sure you get all your preventative tests that we talked about before. And then once you've taken care of yourself, expand this to your family, your neighbors, your friends. Tell them enough is enough. Do you know where you are? Start walking around saying, have you measured? Have you measured? Have you measured? Once people measure, they're dramatically more likely to come into one of these programs and actually do something about it. And I could tell you, this is something that spreads like wildfire. Okay, right now we just have to just light it, man. We just have to make a spark that lights that fire. And you guys are really it because it's just such a big number, right? You help two people, then they help four, and so on, and it grows absolutely exponentially. So again, as we always preach on this thing, you've got to be the CEO of your own health because honestly, no one's coming to save you. You've got to save yourself. Stop relying on the medical system to save you. Do your own research, become an expert on yourself, your own life, your family, your friends, and man, we can make such an impact in the world by doing this. So hopefully you've enjoyed the show today. I certainly have. I can talk about this stuff all day. We'll pick this up the next time I'm able to, do a show. This is Recharging the Human Battery Radio. This is AM 950. I'm your host, Dr. Stefano Sinicropi, and we will see you back next time. Go take care of your families and be the CEO of your own health because you deserve it.